I know, said we're going to bring on a guest for this topic right here. A lot of folks all over the country, and especially in Michigan, are stocking up on guns because of possible violence after the election. Gun stores in Michigan right now, they're seeing a huge surge in firearm sales because their governor was almost kidnapped and murdered by a white supremacist group like not too long ago. So the question is, are you concerned about violence after the election? Down here, this isn't just Michigan too, but even here in Georgia, here in Atlanta, I have friends that are stocking up on guns. You know, like the lines are crazy out the door when you drive past a gun store, and everybody's trying to get armed because they are concerned about people acting out when the results of the election go down. And once again, you know, Trump at that debate told everybody, he said, what did he say? Stand up, stand down, whatever.
Stand back and stand by for the Proud Boys.
Yeah. So he's just letting people know, like, if you have an issue with the way things go, then you're more than welcome to wild out. So that's why people are arming themselves right now.
Yeah, you know, I have friends on both sides. Obviously, I know a lot of Black Republicans as well. And if America's in any sort of duress or anything, it's not going to matter what your political affiliation is, because at the end of the day, to a racist, a Black Republican looks just like a Black Democrat. You know what I'm saying? So like there are people on both sides who are paying attention to that and paying attention to what they're doing, particularly women. Women also have had an increase in new gun ownership. I think about 40% of new gun ownerships is going to women as well. So we figured we want to bring on the show a local expert on guns. He's certainly well connected to the NRA. He is a firearms instructor and also a part of the founder and CEO of Rick's Firearm Academy, and also a veteran of the United States Air Force. And also he's a training counselor and city range safety officer. Let's bring it to the show for this conversation. Rick Ector. What's going on, Rick? Can you hear us?
Hey, man.
Yes, sir. Hey, Mr. Rick, long time no see. You been doing okay?
You know what? It hasn't been that long, man. You know what? I can still remember us getting together for the last time we had a powwow. It might have been maybe a few months ago, but it was good.
Yeah, it's probably like May or something like that. So things might have changed a little bit since May. How have you seen any of the uptick? So we've looked at it, and it looks like just in the first quarter, 5 million guns were sold just in the first January through May. So that was probably before we talked.
Well,
since then,
there is a very healthy and voracious appetite for firearms right now, and it's not just in the Metro Detroit area, across the state of Michigan, but it is across our nation. And there are a few things that you highlighted in some of the topics that you all talked about in a few segments before. You know, the things that I want to draw attention to is when you take into account all of these individual factors. You got the pandemic. You have crime, which was a problem before the pandemic. You've had increased crime during the pandemic because their law enforcement has been impacted. You have violence, regular street violence that's happening, whether it's political, social, or otherwise. And, you know, I hate even looking at the local newscast sometimes. And then if you look across the country, there's riots. You have police officers who are being told to stand down and not address people being violent. Now, as a Second Amendment supporter, I believe that one of the purpose of the second was to protect the first. Having said that, I fervently believe and support any opinion that you have. I truly do. And whether I agree with it or not, you still have the right to say what you feel and what you believe. The minute you cross the line and start using violence, you start rioting and you start burning things up, then I'm going to have to take exception with what you're doing. And then, of course, we have the election. Any one of these individual factors has the potential to set a brand new sales record for firearms in this country. We have all 4 or 5 of these issues working in tandem simultaneously, and the result is predictable. This year, we have sold more guns in this country than any other year on record. And we have exceeded those sales by 40%, and we still have a couple of months to go. Sales are so strong that new gun owners can't find ammunition to load those guns with. So it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, man. You need both. A gun without ammo is totally useless. What I'm being told is primers, it's a part of the actual ammunition cartridge, seems to be the bottleneck. And we'll just have to ride it out. And hopefully none of the predictions that I'm hearing certain people in popular media and culture, they think that if the election goes one way or another, that's going to add another level of violence. I'm looking at our country right now, and we're awash in violence as we speak. So when you talk about people looking at their local communities, they're looking at their local law enforcement in some communities, particularly in communities of color, are being told to stand down and let some of these things happen while things get burned down and people get robbed and killed. So yes, I'm a gun rights advocate. I believe in the First Amendment all the way until you start committing violence. And then I'm going to ask that you be addressed, that you be arrested, and you be held accountable.
That's a real good point, Mr. Ector. Go ahead, Seth.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, let me ask you something. What is the process for people out there that are curious about purchasing a gun? You know, like just newbies, people that have no idea. Is the process, is it a long process? Does it take a while to get your license? How does that work?
Well, there's two things. There's buying a gun, and then there's getting a concealed pistol license. And the elephant in the room, of course, is that you have a national show and you have a national audience. Many gun laws that come into play are on a regional or, in many cases, a statewide basis or in their local municipalities. So many people of color, tend to live in areas which have the highest gun control. For example, a fair number of our people live in New York City. The average person in New York City cannot legally buy a firearm. It's just because of gun control. If you look at a place like Detroit, Michigan, where we have uniform gun laws and ammunition laws all across the state, it's a fairly straightforward process. But then again, I don't want to say that what happens in Michigan is good for the rest of the nation. But in Michigan, where I reside, if you are 21 years of age, can pass a background check and take a qualifying course, you would then be able to apply for a concealed pistol license, which allows you to carry a concealed pistol on or about your person wherever you may legally go if you don't go into a gun-free zone. However, an issue that has reared its ugly head in Detroit, which is a predominantly black city, greater than 70% black, we find that for some reason, the process for getting a concealed pistol license is not being handled appropriately. By that, I mean, if you go and try to set an appointment to try to submit your application for a concealed pistol license, you have to wait for an appointment 9 months in the future and then go in 9 months later, submit an application, pay your fee, and then wait to be approved. Now, as a gun rights advocate in a predominantly black city, it absolutely smells and it stinks. It, in my opinion, is tantamount of gun control. And yes, I live in Detroit, within the boundary. I'm not in the suburbs. Lifelong resident. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in having the ability to get a concealed pistol license if you meet the requirements. Having to wait 9 months to turn in an application is unacceptable. The state of Michigan is making a ton of money on these licenses. What's being done with the money? Where is it being spent? How can we can't bring resources to bear to address these apparent issues and difficulties in getting the license? It's unconscionable.
Right, because it's almost like if I was to watch the local or the national news and hear and listen to the punditry, because obviously they got 24 hours every day to talk about, so they can find all sorts of things to kind of get us worked up about anyway. So if I'm listening to that and then I decide, you know what, I need to protect myself. Realistically, I probably can't get a gun legally before
you can buy a gun legally. I'll tell you this: it won't be the gun you probably initially wanted. You might have to go down to your third choice, your fourth choice, your fifth choice, your sixth choice. But you can definitely get something. Now, here's the thing: if you're going too far down your preferred list, you might significantly be sacrificing quality and liability. But if you go high on the list, you may be spending much more for a gun than you absolutely need. For example, if I told you the average self-defense gun would maybe be between $400 and $600, well, gee, those guns aren't even available. You're going to have to buy those premium competition level firearms, and you might actually pay an exorbitant amount of money. And then you have to ask yourself, am I going to willingly pay through the nose to get a gun, to have a gun, or not have one? And if you're looking at the local newscast, you're thinking to yourself, I better get something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the overall consensus with a lot of people, like you heard us talk about earlier, where a lot of people just feel there's a sense of, uncertainty coming up with the election. No, people don't know how things are going to go. And I think
the election, but it's things before we even get to the election right now.
Yeah.
The things we're dealing with right now, the pandemic, crime. I looked
poverty.
At the newscast here in Detroit, man. Some of the wanton, violent, unnecessary problems that we're having right now, it boggles the mind, man. And we still have the specter of what's going to happen, in the future. So it's not a good place right now, man. It's not a good place.
Definitely. So, Rick, I guess as we're thinking forward and looking at different things, talk a little bit about what your process is and how people come to you if they made the decision. All right, well, I have my finances ready. I know what gun I'm going to get. Now, what are my steps so that I can do this thing legally? Because we've seen what's happened when people don't do it legally.
Yeah, unfortunately, man, and there's been some stories in the local media here, man, when you're looking at a 9-month wait for an appointment to submit your application, when we're looking at some of the challenges that we have locally, people who would ordinarily qualify for the license and who've actually taken the training, they're disenfranchised from even filling out the application for 9 months. Many of them are tempted to carry anyway, right? Yeah. And of course, if they're caught, or heaven forbid, they actually have to use that firearm, now they're subjected to a felony, which will forever take away their right to legally own a gun. It's just not a good place, man. But if an individual wishes to get a concealed pistol license, you must be 21 years of age, be able to pass a criminal background check, and take a qualifying 8-hour course that will teach you everything about fundamental firearm safety. It will actually teach you some ways to deter a criminal defense attack, how to significantly lessen the odds of being selected. And of course, if, for no other reason, you've done everything you could to not put yourself in a vulnerable position, you are attacked. If someone creates an imminent attack of great bodily harm, sexual assault, or death, you have the legal option to use lethal force without a duty to retreat. You don't have to run first, which may exist in some states. It's the so-called stand your ground law. And some people take exception to it, but I don't believe that if someone is trying to rob me or kill me or otherwise carjack me or victimize me, that I should have to run first and have some prosecutor asking me, why did I run south instead of east? That really is unconscionable. But, to questions people typically raise, I believe every shooting should be investigated fully by law enforcement. And if there is something that was done improperly, done not in accordance with the law, I will be the first person who would argue that person be held accountable.
Right. Absolutely. Mr. Ector, let me ask you something. You mentioned background check. Does the background check include anything about where a person is mentally, like mental stability? Because there's a lot of people that are unhealthy mentally. They have mental issues. And it seems like even taking it back to what was the church shooting in South Carolina said with the Dylan Roof, who was mentally ill and went in a church, he had access to a gun. Are people being screened mentally before they get guns?
Is there a screening? No, there isn't a screening per se. However, if you've ever been adjudicated as having a mental illness, and that is part of your public record, so to speak, yes, that will force you to be ineligible to buy a firearm or possess a firearm. In many of these cases, and there's been so many of them, many people knew that these people had problems and issues. Many of these people were adjudicated of having a mental defect, and some of these people are just plain evil. But here's the point. Regardless of whether you've been adjudicated of being mentally ill or you're just a criminal or just plain flat right evil, the fact that it's already against the law for you to have a firearm will not deter you from getting one and using it to do bad things.
Right. That makes sense.
Wow.
Man.
I think the bigger issue, man, is to enable and empower people such that if evil ever appears, that you're able to put it down and put it down quickly with the loss of less life possible. I don't relish the opportunity of being forced to defend myself and potentially shoot, injure, and kill another person. My sole concern is personal protection, and I hope that I never am put in a situation in which I need to defend myself. However, if that should happen, I will use my talents, my skills, my ability, my equipment to do what I have to do to protect myself from a criminal attack against my life or someone that I love that is in my direct company when I'm out and about.
Wow.
That's awesome. We appreciate that, Rick. We put your information up on the screen so people can get in contact with you, because I know you have appointments that you set for people who need some consultation so that they can make their next steps on purchasing a gun and that sort of thing. And you have training. You got your own school, Rick's Firearm Academy. So you do this. This is what you do.
Yeah, it's what I do, man. And let me tell you, you want to know how I started? I started as a guy who only firearm I own, and you guys in the South can appreciate this. Only thing I owned was a 12-gauge shotgun. That was it. I had no desire to be a handgun owner. I had no desire to get a concealed pistol license. You know what happened? One night around this time of the year when it gets dark early, I was coming home from work, and two younger versions of people that looked like me robbed me at gunpoint in my driveway.
Wow. Wow.
And so I had an epiphany, and I decided to take on a more active role in my personal protection. And I haven't looked back, man.
Well, kudos to you, Mr. Ector. We really appreciate you being on the show this evening, too. Don't forget, you can reach out to Mr. Rick Ector. What's your social media? Well, I always ask because it's right there on the screen. But for the people that's listening, there are people that's listening on Spotify that
you're right. You're right. Good point. This is a podcast. We're recording. You gotta do the audio part.
So please shout out your social media handles, Mr. Ector.
Social media handles: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I am Detroit CCW. Detroit CCW. Don't get the I and the O mixed up, because you'll spell the riot instead of Detroit. Look forward to anybody who wants to reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you again. I see some comments coming in for Mr. Ector too before he goes. From, let's see, Felicia Nicole. She said, this whole topic has me anxious. Been feeling this way for months. Great show, guys. Great info. All right. There we go. All right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for your time this evening, sir. You stay blessed. And I'm sure we're going to have you back on the show real soon, Rick.
Man, all you have to do is I'll make time for you, and thank you for allowing me to be on the show and to speak with your listening audience. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Appreciate your time, Rick.
Yeah, great information today. Great information today. Wow, has me thinking about getting a gun.
Yeah, like it's just one of those things, because Black people, we just have a different reality just because we look like we look, and like we just know that people have ill intentions, and sometimes people can look at you funny, and like I've been thinking, I saw this video. It was an Instagram video. There's this guy, black guy. He had a bag and he was walking down the street, and two white guys came at him. He reached into his bag, but kept walking away. He reached into his bag and kept walking away. The two guys kept coming at him, and he ended up shooting them. So it's like we're in a weird little state, weird little environment where people just are brave enough to even want to try you. Because me, if I saw a brother with his hand in his bag like this while he's still walking, there's no way that I would keep coming at him. No way, no way. But
exactly,
yeah, like you got some crazies, you got some idiots who are out there. So like I get people with you. Yeah, you got a lot of people who are feeling just like Felicia are feeling. Like we do need to start thinking about this. I know historically, black people, we are not gun owners. I think maybe historically about 15-20% of black America really owns guns. That's increasing now. Most of the guns, really, if you want to know traditionally who owned guns, were white men. White men were the demographic that really owned and bought all the guns, but that's changing now. Black people are seeing what the world is giving. Women are seeing what the world is giving. And you notice those two demographics are the highest demographics for people making new gun purchases in 2020. So yeah, you might not hear a lot about it, but people are thinking about it and people are going ahead and doing it. So notice to the Proud Boys or anybody else trying to be crazy, black women and black people are arming themselves, so they're
ready. Well, that I'm glad that you said that, because I'm skipping over said, I know that we have a kind of run of the show and everything like that, but this is a great segue into the Amber Riley story. Now,